Good evening, everybody.
Kabbalah, how are you?
Thank God. Okay. Okay. Next chapter. Okay, so anyway, it says like this, something was malfunctioning there. It says, mitzvata misof shkiat hachama ad chatzi sha'a min halayla. So when is the mitzvah to do the Hanukkah candles? The end of the sunset, right? That term, according to the halacha, there are different opinions about what it means, but it means that basically, according to most authorities, it means that the sun went down, and then you have more darkness after that as well. So we call that, the coming out of the stars, Tzeta Kochavim. So that's when you're supposed to light the Hanukkah candles. When is that? We're talking about 15 minutes after the sun goes down. So nowadays, right, here in New York, the sun goes down at 4:30. So that would mean that you should light it like 4:45. And then after that, you have a half hour. So that means the ideal thing would be to light at 4:45 and then to have it going lit until 5:15. That would be enough. So if you put enough oil into your candle to have it lit for a half hour, you're doing good. You could also, if you can't do it at 4:45 for some reason, let's say you're out in prayers at that time, Arvit, whatever. So you could start at 5, and that would also be fine. So, you have pretty much like a time range from about quarter to 5 to 5. Okay, so, but if you go now to different places, like the south and southeast, so it's going to be according, to the horizon over there. So, what does that mean? You're going to get your local sunset time where you live, right? And you're going to add 15 minutes to it. That's the way it's going to work, So that's what we're talking about. This is the best time to light. Let's go on a little bit. So he says that what's the reason why the rabbis made this time to be the ideal time to light? That's when people are usually getting home from work, in those days anyway, right? That's the way it was. Why is that? Because they didn't have street lights, things like this at that time. So therefore, when it got dark, people pretty much came home and went to sleep. They weren't really up so much at night, but they didn't have electricity, so that's why the rabbis made it at that time where people are coming home from work. So this way, the miracle can be publicized um, more and more because people are, walking around the street at that time, going home from their job and so forth and so on. Okay, so that's that. ורואים בביתם ויקם פרסום מניסה. הילקח צריך ליתן בה שמן כזה כשיעור. So he says, therefore, he says you have to put enough oil in there that it should last for a half hour, and that's what we need. Yeah, of course, you can add more if you want, most people put more because today, we have an abundance of everything. So there's no lacking of anything, so we want to have it lit like, lighting for 2, 3 hours. That's fine, you can do 2, 3 hours if you want. But that's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is only half hour. That's the way it works. Okay, good. So let's go on a little bit. So he says, right, that if you put more oil, so it's going to light more than a half hour, as we said, right, 2, 3 hours, whatever. So he can put it out, once the half hour passes by, he can extinguish it if he wants. Some people don't like that, when you put it out, they say, "Oh my God, what did you do? You put it out? What happened?" We're enjoying watching the lights. Okay, okay, you can enjoy it as much as you want, but the mitzvah is over in a half hour. So that's the way it works, yeah. Okay. וכן יכול להשתמש לאורה לאחר זה הזמן שעבר עיקר מצוותה. Another thing he points out, right, which is also important to know, not only the fact that, as we said, right, you can extinguish it, but also if you want to leave it lit, you could, of course, no problem, as long as you're awake, you're watching it. We don't want you to start a fire in the house, you know what I mean? So make sure you're awake. If you're going to sleep, you should put it out because there is a fire hazard, leaving the candles lit when you go to sleep. Not such a good idea, people tell you, oh, well, what are you talking about? Come on, it's just a candle. Yeah, well, we've from experience, we've seen that there have been many fires in houses because of Hanukkah candles, and Shabbat candles. So you got to be careful, it's don't play games with that. So he's telling you, right, that you also have the option if you want to leave it on, fine, no problem. But not only that, but you can also use the lights now. What does that mean? As we said yesterday, right? We mentioned yesterday that you're not allowed to get benefit from the lights. You can't benefit from it because it's only for the mitzvah. But once the or so long as the mitzvah is going on. Once the mitzvah is over in a half hour, you can benefit from it. Why? Because the mitzvah is over. So that's another right significance of this halacha. Okay, so then he goes on. But he says either way. One second. Yeah. וכן יכול להשתמש בה. עיקר מצוותיו. כל מקום ידיים זמנה כל הלילה, ודלא הזמן שעבר עיקר מצוותה. כל מקום עדיין זמנה כל הלילה, ודלא כרמב"ם. So he says, but nevertheless, right, even though we said that the main mitzvah is for a half hour, but he says, nevertheless, if you didn't get a chance to light during that half hour that we just mentioned, so you can light, all night as well. Let's say you came home a little bit later, right? Let's say, you get home from work at 8 o'clock, right? Or 9 or whatever it is, or it could be even later, right? So what you can do is you can light when you get home, whenever it is. So even though the best time to light is, as we said, right, 15 minutes after sunset or a half hour after sunset, right? That's an opportune time. But if you couldn't light at that time, you can go on all night. So he says, not like the Rambam. Why? Because the Rambam doesn't agree with this, right? What does the Rambam say? שכתב שכחך והזיד ולא הדליק עם שקיעת החמה, מדליק עד שתכלה רגל מן השוק, אבל זה הזמן, אינו מדליק, אבל אם עבר כל הלילה, ולא הדליק, לא ידליק ביום המחרת. So he says, right, that the Rambam holds something else. The Rambam holds that once you miss that half hour, that's it, you lost the mitzvah, so right, but mentions the Torah, right? He maintains that we don't paskin like the Rambam, we don't do like the Rambam. What's the reason why? Because even though the Rambam, technically speaking, he's correct, he's telling you only have that half hour, because that's when people are walking around the street. But nowadays, as we said, right, that people are coming home later, so that's not really the only time that people are walking around. And also you have the people in your house as well. So therefore, the rule is not like the Rambam. And so a person who came home later can light later as well, whatever it is, right? 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever, right? Until the wee hours. No problem. Okay. Let's go on. So he says, but, right, the Torah says, nevertheless, even though we don't paskin like the Rambam, but one thing for sure, right, that if you waited all night until dawn, it's already the end of the night is over. So then you cannot do the mitzvah, you lost it, right? The mitzvah is only meant for the night. So therefore, once the night is over, right, at the crack of dawn, you lost the mitzvah. That's what he says, the Torah. That's the way it is. So regarding that, everybody agrees, nobody will tell you can light the Hanukkah candles after dawn, because it's already daytime. So it's too late. That's the story. Okay. Let's go on. וכן לא ישלים בלילה של אחריו. Also, another thing is you can't make up this mitzvah the night after, whatever, you missed the first night. Oh, okay, well, if I missed the first night, I'll light the second night, That's not going to help you, right? The night of the first mitzvah you missed, so you lost that night. Then there's no way to make that up. So, if you remember, we talked about, when we talked about praying the Amidah, we said you can make up the Amidah if you lost it, right? Sometimes you can make it up. But here, there's no way to make it up. So once the dawn has come and the night is over, right? There's no makeups anymore. So you got to wait till the next night, which is a different mitzvah. You know what I mean? It's not connected to the first night. It's a different mitzvah altogether. So that's why you got to be careful. Don't wait too long. Make sure when you get home from your job or whatever it is that you go, make sure you light right away. Don't wait till like you first have dinner, and then talk with your friends, and this and that and right, all kinds of things to distract you. You shouldn't do that, right? Right away when you get home, whenever it may be, right? Even if it's a little bit late. First thing you should do is, light the Hanukkah candles, and then everything else can come later, right? You can have dinner, right? Whatever it is that you want to do. So this way, right, you won't fall asleep, and then all of a sudden, you wake up in the morning. Where am I? Oh, gee, I missed the Hanukkah candles. Yeah, you missed it because you fell asleep, and it's already dawn. It's too late. It's already morning. This is the problem. Okay. So let's see the Beit Yosef on all this. Let's see where we're going here. Yeah, so says the Beit Yosef over here. Regarding the Torah that we just read, the Perek Mamem Madlikin, right? Again, right? Where is this coming from? From the Perek of in Shabbat, right? Kaf Aleph Amud Bet. Tanya, mitzvata mishetishka chama. It says over there like this, right, in the Gemara. The mitzvah of doing the Hanukkah candles, right? When is it? When does it start? As we said, once the sun has already set, and another 15 minutes or so, right, or half hour, whatever, right? There's different opinions about that, whatever, but 15 minutes is enough. Half hour is a bonus, whatever. Right? Sometimes a bonus. Anyway, right? So he says that that's when you really want to light. Why is that? Because as we said, right? So we have that time where people are walking around until the people are stop walking around the street, which is like a half hour. In those days, nowadays we got street lights, we got street lamps, we got all kinds of stuff. It's a different story. But the sages, since they decreed it during that time, during that period where there was no street lights and street lamps, so they did it according to their situation, and so therefore, they made the times accordingly. That's what we're saying. That's what we're saying. Okay, so he goes on to say. כתבו הריף, says the Arif regarding that, the Rosh also, the שיעור שתכלה רגל מן השוק, so he says, how long is that time where people stop walking around? הווה כמו חצי שעה, it's like a half hour, as we said. אחר שקיעת החמה, after sunset, right? בפרש בגמרא, he explains in גמרא, דהיינו לעניין דאה לה אדליק, right? So it tells you like this, the Gemara explains that means like this, that if you didn't light by then, during that half hour, שקיעת החמה הוא מפרש מדליק ואינמי לשיעורה כתבו. So this telling you, right, there's two different things here that are going on. What is it teaching you, this law? Teaching you one thing, right, that if you haven't lit by then, you can still light. You have a half hour. And also, there's also another issue, which is also being discussed here, which is that how long does the candle have to light? So that's also half hour, because that's the time frame that we're dealing with here regarding this mitzvah. Enami l'shi'ura Alternatively, right, כלומר, שצריך ליתן שמן לתוכה כדי שתהיה דלקת והולכת עד שיעור הזה. So it's telling you, right, that means that when you light the Hanukkah candles, you have to have enough oil in your candle that it should light for a half hour. That's also another practical difference here, right? A practical application. So, if you're using like, wax candles or paraffin, right? Those paraffin candles, the ones they call Hanukkah candles, those colorful ones, right? So it's not the best way to do the mitzvah. It's not bad, by the way. It's pretty good. It's not the best. It's not the worst because it lights pretty clear, those paraffin candles. So they're pretty good in that sense, and they do burn for a half hour, even the smaller ones, they do burn that long. So that's not really a problem. But if you're using oil, olive oil, which is, as we said, right, this is the best thing to use. So there, you have to make sure that when you light it, there should be enough oil in your cup to burn for a half hour, as we said. Okay. So then Betcha tells you, right, that, and if once the half hour has passed, as we already mentioned in the tour, then you could put it out, even though you have extra oil there, whatever, it doesn't really make any difference. You can just put it out and leave it like that. So you don't have to keep it going on all night. Some people think it's like some kind of a, entertainment thing, whatever, just like leave it on all night and enjoy it. Okay, if you want to, you could, but, the mitzvah is a half hour. So, that's the way it works. Okay, good. So let's go on with the Bet Yosef a little bit. So it goes on Bet Yosef and says, השיעור הזה ורצה לכבותו, ואחד ימינן דאה לה אדליק, מדליק כתב הראש, and that which we said, right, that if he didn't light until then, he can still light that half hour, אבל מכאן ואילך עבר הזמן נלקח, but he says afterwards, after that half hour, the time has already passed, right? As we said, according to Rambam, that's too late already. Hilkach אף על פי שמתרץ תירוץ אחר, says therefore, even though he answers a different answer there, ראוי להחמיר להדליק נר חנוכה בתחילת הלילה. So even though, right, there's different ways of answering this question, but since we do have an opinion like this, that only that half hour really works, and afterwards, right, it does not work anymore. So therefore, proper thing to do is to be stringent and to light on time, because this way, you're sure that you're doing the mitzvah properly, even according to the Rambam, right? Because as we said, according to Rambam, after the half hour, you already lost it. That's the way it goes. Okay. Good. So it goes on here, Umashma midbarav dehainu lechatchila, aval ima avar velo idlik. But it says, but Yosef, right, that as we said, the Rambam is one thing, but when it comes to the Rosh, though, the Rosh, it seems like, is only lechatchila. In other words, the preferred time is that half hour. But if he couldn't do that half hour, but the avad, he can do it also later, as we said. That's the way it's implied from his language, the language of the Rosh. Okay, ילקח אף על פי שמתרץ תירוץ אחר, ראוי להחמיר ולהדליק בין נר חנוכה מתחילת הלילה, משמע מדבריו דהיינו לכתחילה, אבל אם עבר ולהדליק לא הדליק, מספיק, right, הדליק מספק, וכן כתוב בתוספות, that's what it says in also תוספות, ידליק מספק, you can light from a doubt. וכן כתוב בתוספות, בשם ריפורט, according to this rabbi, ולא היה לו לרבנו לכתוב ודלא כרמב"ם. So he says something interesting, right? He says that the Torah didn't need to write here that this opinion is not like the Rambam. שכתב עבר הזה הזמן אינו מדליק, because the Rambam said, as we said, right, that once that time has passed, he already lost the mitzvah altogether. מאחר שאלף דברי אומר מדליק אינו מדליק אלא מספק. So he says, because he says, when you're lighting, right after that time, it's already like doubtful, because as we said, according to Rambam, it's not really so good. But he's trying to tell you like this, right? What he's trying to maintain here, he's trying to emphasize is that there is a doubt about it when you do it this way. When you wait until after the half hour, right, and you light later, we're not really sure if you're fulfilling the mitzvah or not. That's what he's saying. Okay. He goes on, Bet Yosef. ומה שכתב, ואם עבר כל הלילה ולא הדליק במחרת, and now what she said the two, right, that if he didn't light all night until the dawn, so he lost the mitzvah, as we said. You can't make it up the next night either, right? You can't make it up. There's no makeup. There's no once the dawn has come, you lost it, right? That's the way it goes. That's language of Mordechai, in there in the Gemara. Heshiv Rabbi Meir, so Rabbi Meir answers, which is Rabbi Meir Mirotenburg, right? Bener Chanukah Shelo Hidlik Balayla. That when it comes to Ner Chanukah, they didn't light all night. Kach da'ati noter. So he said, that's the way I feel. That's the way I opine. Techevan shelo yidlik shuv lo yadlik. That once the dawn has come, you can't light anymore. It's too late. Lo yadlik. V'dichui hu kedetanya. So it says it's considered to be like he lost it. The mitzvata. Kedetanya mitzvata mishetishakach hama ad shetichle regel min hashuk. Because it says in the Braita that the mitzvah is from sunset until the the people stop walking around the street. The elo adlik adlik madlik. Because if you didn't light until that point, you can still light. Mashma shelo asa mitzvah min hamubchar. But he didn't do the best way anyway. Uvayom en pirsum hanes. So he says during the daytime there is no publication of the miracle. Right? It's not publicized. Why is that? Because people can't see the candles so well at night. In the daytime, I'm sorry. In the daytime, they can't see it. So it's not really being publicized. So therefore, the real mitzvah of Hanukkah candles is always at night. Okay, so says also all the more so the other nights. Lo yadlik, you shouldn't do that, right? You shouldn't light after dawn. That kind of shana. ומצאתי כתוב בתשובת אשכנזית, so it's I found written in תשובה אשכנזית, דלא בא הרם לומר, that the Ram didn't come to say, אלא דאותו לילה, that only that night, the first night, אין לו תשלומים, he can't make it up that night, אבל הלילות אחרות, when it comes to the other nights, לא כאה, he's not talking about that, the נס כל יום איתה, so he says why, because there's a miracle every day, איתה ולית דין צריך בושש, וכן איתה באגודה, so ולא דמה, so that's the way it's written also in the אגודה, ולא דמה לאומר, and it doesn't resemble the mitzvah of Omer, counting the Omer. איתה באגודה, one second, okay. Yeah. So again, right, it doesn't resemble the mitzvah of Omer. The hatam mishum dichtid, because over there it's written regarding the Omer, temimot tiena, right, that it should be complete counting. But here, each mitzvah, the Hanukkah candles is a mitzvah by itself, not really related one to the other. Each mitzvah is independent. So it's that which we add every night, more candles is just like a stringency, like it's not really obligation so much. That's what it says in Rokeach. That's what it says in the Rokeach. If you didn't light one night, you cannot light tomorrow, right? Tomorrow morning. Or different night. That's whatever he was supposed to do that night, the first night. But doesn't resemble Kriyat Shema. Or tefillah or prayers. Because we say over there in Brachot, that he can make it up, right, and pray again. And also this book, הביא תשובת הר"ם, he brought the תשובה of the Ram, ודבריו מבוארים, and he says there, his words are explained שם, כמו שכתבתי בשם התשובה האשכנזית, like I wrote in the name of the תשובה האשכנזית. Okay. גוזן, כתוב באורחות חיים. It says in the אורחות חיים, מי שלא הדליק בליל שלישי, if he didn't need light on the third night, אלא שתי נרות, right? He only lit 2 candles, right? So, the rule is, right? We do today, each night, a new candle, right? So the third night, we're lighting 3 candles. So what did this guy do? He only lit 2. Right? Or let's say on Wednesday, on the 4th night, he only did 3, right? So he was lacking 1 candle. So he said there was actually a story like this in a city called Lunil, and they were stringent that they should light whatever was lacking there in the number. But you don't have to bless again. Because you already did the mitzvah. In other words, the basic mitzvah is only 1 candle, So if you didn't do the number of candles, you're lacking 1. So you can, light more candles, no problem, but you don't make a blessing, because the blessing is only going on 1 candle, basically. You don't need more than that. Because he says the blessing that he made in the beginning was on the obligation, he made it on all the candles. Okay. Says Rashba. Let's say he didn't light 1 night, says the Rashba, right? One of the nights of the 8 nights. He can't make it up, as we said, right? There's no makeups here. Because it's already gone, right? The mitzvah is already dissipated. That's what he's saying. So it says, it seems to me like the Rashba is trying to say like this. Like the Ram, like the words of the Ram. Right, and we're only talking about that night, doesn't have any makeup, the first night. And that which we learned in the Braita, that the mitzvah starts when the sun goes down, right? As we said, it's a little bit later because it's the end of the sun going down, not the beginning. He writes that there's no makeup there. I'm sorry, I didn't read it right. One more time. That which we said that the mitzvah is when the sun goes down, katav aran says around regarding that. It doesn't mean that he can't light before. So the Ran is trying to say, right? It's possible to light even before that. And like ikar mitzvah, but the main mitzvah, the best mitzvah, is that, right? Meaning what? That sunset and a little bit more, right? The end of sunset, which is, as we said, 15 minutes more or so. So but if you want to do a little bit earlier, says the Ran, you can do a little bit earlier, and that's the custom of the Gra, by the way, right? Which a lot of Ashkenazim they do, that they light not 15 minutes after sunset, they light at sunset, right? That's some Ashkenazim do like that. But the truth is that most people do like 15 minutes or a half hour after sunset. Not at sunset. Okay, anyway. רצה להקדים מקדים, אבל מדברי בהלכות, but it says, בהלכות גדולות, נראה דווקא נקט בישן, but it seems like he's more like saying, no, it has to be דווקא, like really after sunset, right? Not during sunset. during דווקא נקט. ושתשכח חמה עד כאן לשונו, בדברי הרמב"ם, so that's the end of that rabbi. And what about the Rambam? What's the story with the Rambam? כדברי הבעל הלכות גדולות, סקט להלכות גדולות, שכתב, אין מדליקים נרות חנוכה קודם שתשכח חמה. He says you cannot light before the sun goes down. אלא אם שקיעתה לא מאחרין ולא מקדימין. You can do during the sundown, not before, not after. ונראה שדקדק רבנו, so it seems like רבנו, the tour, was deducing, לכתוב מסוף שקיעת החמה, משום בתחילת שקיעת החמה, עדיין היום גדול הוא. That he was talking about Rabbeinu, that when it talks about sunset, it's talking about the end of sunset. Why? Because during sunset, it's still daytime. right? It's not night yet when the sun goes down. So that's a different story. כמו שכתבו תוספות פרק במד מלכים. So we have here, okay, let's see how much we can. Yeah, I guess we can just finish this off. I'm not gonna even ask you for 5 minutes. I'm just gonna take it. I'm gonna take it for free, whether you agree or not, because I know what the answer is gonna be. Okay, so I'm just gonna read a few more lines here, right? In the tour and the Bet Yosef. So the tour goes on here. It says like this. "Kakatav Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yehuda." That's this rabbi says. But Tosfot Katvu. The Tosfot says. The ledidan for us, אין עוד צריך לדקדק בזה, you don't have to be careful about this, שנתנו חז"ל שיעור שלא נתנו אלא להם שיעור מדליקין בחוץ וחוץ. So Tosfot says, right, that which it says in the Talmud, we just mentioned, right, that you have to light on time, like the time frame that we mentioned. That's only, it says, in those days. Tosfot says, why? Because in those days they were lighting outside, the candles, right? Where do we light? We don't light outside. Right, we light inside, on the window ledge, right, or the dining room table, whatever it is, right? That's where we light. We don't light outside. There are some people in Israel, by the way, who do that. They light outside, but most people don't do this anymore. It's already like passed from the world, passed away. It's a custom which has already like disappeared, dissipated, whatever. Right. So most people don't light outside. Um, so he says, therefore, Tosfot says, since we don't light outside anymore. Right? We don't really have to follow this time frame, we're not really so careful because we're lighting for the people in the house, the family, we're not really lighting for the people in the street. What do we care about them? What do you call it? We're not lighting for them anymore. That's the custom has changed. Right? So that's what Tosfot is saying. And that's halacha, by the way. That's the most poskim, whether it's the earlier or later authorities or later authorities, they all agree that the main mitzvah is to light indoors now, even though in the times of the Talmud, the main mitzvah really was to light outdoors. So things have changed, Anyway, it says, but after that time already, right, there's no people passing the street. So he says, but since we light at home, so what do we care about that, right? People are walking in the street or not. Who cares, right? We're not lighting for them. We're lighting for the family members. So he says, so he says, therefore, Tosfot says, we don't really have to be careful about the time anymore. It's not such a big thing. That first half hour, it's not really something crucial. And that's pretty much the halacha. What he's saying, the Tosfot. Okay, so anyway, right? We'll finish it off here. The tour. So it says בסעיף ה' מכל מקום. So it says there the Tosfot furthermore נכון להדליק בעוד בני הבית נאורים. But it says anyway, right? Even though we're not so particular about the time, as we said, but he says it is proper though, that you should light when people are still awake in the house, So don't come, like at 2 o'clock in the morning, and light then. I'm not telling you it's forbidden, but I'm telling you, right, it's not the best way to do it. It's not proper to light so late like that. Because everybody's sleeping, So who are you lighting for? The ghosts? What? The demons? Who are you lighting for, right? What's going on? That's the idea. So, but it says תוספות, ונראה שאף לדינן צריך לדק בשיעור כפי שמדליקים בפנים, כיוון שמדליקים בפתח הבית והוא פתח פתוח, יש להקל על העוברים בשמים. Also, another thing he says here, right, the תוספות, second, So it seems like that comes back, right? The Tosfot, and says something even more. That even though, as we said, right, that we're only lighting, we're mainly lighting for the people indoors nowadays. But nevertheless, he says, since we're lighting by the door where people come into the house, so people outside do see the candles anyway. So he says, therefore, it is proper to be stringent anyway and to light on time. So a lot of things going on here. It's a little bit confusing perhaps, but just to make it straight, to give you the idea. Nowadays, by the way, a lot of us don't really light by the entrance of the house. A lot of people don't do this anymore. They light by the window sill, the inside of the window, not the outside. Some people light on their table, right? Whatever. So either way, right? We're not really lighting so much for the outside people. It's more like a minor issue, that people outside should see it. The main issue is that the family should see it. That's basically what we're saying, right? Okay, that's the end of the tour. So let's go back to the Bet Yosef and finish it off here. So says Bet Yosef, כתוב בשם מאמרי יצחק אבוהב, this is the name of this rabbi, שכתב באורחות חיים, that says in this rabbi's book, מי שהדליק מבעוד יום, if a person lit during the daytime, right? אפילו בחול, even during the weekdays, right? So what does that mean? He lit before sunset, right? That's what we're talking about. מפני שהוא טרוד, because he's got some things going on, so he has to light early. יצא, he did fulfill his obligation. והוא שיהיה מפלג המנחה האחרון. But he says it has to be, that at least he did from פלג המנחה, right? What is פלג המנחה? We're talking about, right, 1 hour before sunset, approximately, right? There's different ways of calculating that, by the way. But just as as a reference point, right? We're talking approximately 1 hour before sunset. And that's what we do right on Erev Shabbat, right? When we're going to light this year, we're going to start lighting on Thursday night, and then we're going to light Friday. So Friday, what are we going to do, right? Can't light on Shabbat, so what we do is we light during the daytime before sunset. So that's what he's talking about, something like that, that a person has no choice pretty much, or for some other reason, not because it's Shabbat, just, some other reason that a person needs to light. So he says, this rabbi, that, if he lit before sunset, as long as it was after Plaga Mincha, which is the same time frame, by the way, for the Shabbat candles, if you heard me talking about those things, pretty much the same idea, right? Pretty much the same issue. But so therefore he says, right, that he can fulfill his obligation in a time of need, for Hanukkah candles, in a time where he can't light after sunset, he can do also before sunset. Okay, and that's what we do on Friday, right? As we said, right? Just to remind you again.
Do we need to make sure that we've got like candles that will burn after sundown?
Yeah, right. That's a good point, right? That when you're lighting on Friday, since you're lighting around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Give or take, right? So that means your candle should be lit like until probably 6, so you should have like 2 hours of oil in there. At least that much, right? We don't want less than that. I mean, technically speaking, you could get away with like 5:30, like an hour and a half. That would be good enough, But just to have some slack, as a reference point, right? 2 hours is a good reference point. Put 2 hours worth of oil in there, which is not very hard, by the way, right? It's not really a lot of oil. It's very, very little amount. So it's no big deal. You do it anyway on the weekdays as well. So that's not really a big sacrifice there, right? Whatever it is, right? So yeah, you should have enough. So what does that mean? You should have enough. How much do you need? It should be enough that it'll burn at sunset and another half hour, right? At the end of sunset. So we're talking about basically 45 minutes, right, after sunset. So technically speaking, right, if you want to go like dry, we're talking about 5:15, right? That's good enough. But be a little bit generous and put until 6, right? And I guarantee you, you won't lose anything, right? You won't become poor. There's no poverty from that. Okay, so that's the way it goes, right? So yeah, you need enough can oil for that, as we mentioned. So goes on here. אפילו בכל מפני שווייד, it goes on here, מי הוא צריך ליתן בה שמן יותר משיעור להדקה, as we said, right, you have to put enough oil in there, right, he mentioned the same thing that you mentioned there, כדי שתדליק עד שדקליה רגלה דתלמודי. Okay, so we got the idea, right, whatever we should, that's what he's saying right now. Okay, let's see Shulchan Aruch and we're done. Let's see Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so it says in Shulchan Aruch like this, אין מדליקין נר חנוכה קודם שתשקע חמה. We don't light, right, the Hanukkah candles until the sun goes down, right? אלא אם סוף השקיעתה. So it says in Shulchan Aruch, right, what are we talking about? We're not talking about the beginning of the sundown. We're talking about the end, which is like basically when the stars come out, you know? So what is that? As we said, right, we're talking about 15 minutes after sundown. That's a good, proper, nice, proper time. Some people here in America, they do more, you know, like in Israel, they do that much, pretty much. Here in America, some people do like a half hour, you know, whatever. There are reasons for that, but it's not necessary. You don't have to be so stringent, you know. But if you want to do a half hour, that's also no problem. You didn't lose nothing. Goes on, right? But don't do too early, not do too late, right? Try to do like that time. That's the proper particular time, the best time, you know. And some say, right, there's an opinion that if there's something going on with you, you know, you got some kind of situation, you can start, you know, you can light also even, right, from Plaga Mincha, which is, we said, right, which is like an hour before sunset. But as we said, right, you have to put enough oil that it should go half hour after sunset, right? You know, the later part of sunset. Okay, that's the first Shulchan Aruch. Let's go to the second one. I think there's another one here. I'm not mistaken. So it says in Shulchan Aruch, right, bet, shachach or ezid velo idlik shketa chama. Let's say he didn't light on time, right? As we said, the proper time. So what do you do? So you can still light during that half hour, right? Which is still, you know, the proper opportune time since people are walking around the street, as we said, right? In the old days, that's the way it was. Which is a half hour after the proper time. So there's more of like a publicizing the miracle there. So therefore, you have to put like a half hour's worth of oil in there, right? Make sure it lights at that time. If you put more than a half hour, you can just put it out, right? You can extinguish it, you know, whenever you feel like it, right? Or whatever, you're getting drowsy and you want to go to sleep, whatever. Or let's say you want to go out, you know, and do something in the outside. So, you know, if you want to leave the house, recommend, you know, don't leave the house unattended with candles. So therefore, the proper thing to do once it was lit for a half hour, just put it out and go wherever you want to go, right? That's the idea. Okay, so that's that. Also, you can use the light right after that, because it's not holy anymore, right? There's no mitzvah anymore. Says the Rama here, so some say in our times, that we light indoors, right? This is the Tosfot that we mentioned in Bet Yosef. We don't have to be careful to light on that time, during that time, because it's not so important anymore, We're lighting for the indoors, not for the outdoors. But it says Rama, anyway, it's good to be stringent, and to fulfill this. So therefore, as a practical matter, we tell people like this, try to do it on time if you can. If there's a reason you can't do it on time, so then do it afterwards, whenever you get home, whatever it is you're doing, right? You're working, whatever it is. You still have time afterwards, 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever it is. You're okay, but if you can do it at 4:45 or 5 o'clock, whatever, right? Depending on your horizon, wherever you live. So that's the best time to do it. So it says the Shulchan Aruch, that's only lechatchila. But it says if that time already passed, that half hour, he didn't light, he can light all night, right? As we said, until the wee hours of the morning, he can still light. He can still do the mitzvah. Even 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, no problem. He can do it. Not the best time, but if he couldn't get home, he had to go somewhere, whatever, and he got home late, So yeah, that's possible to do it. That's the thing. So what does that mean? We don't pass like the Rambam, right? Because according to Rambam, you only have that half hour. That's all you got. So we don't pass like the Rambam. No, that's very simple. But it says if the whole night passed already, but Lord, he didn't light, right? Meaning what? It's already dawn. So here, I don't know what about you guys where you live, but where I live, dawn is about 6 o'clock in the morning now. So therefore, if you didn't light till 6, you lost the mitzvah, right? That's pretty much the story, right? So make sure, you don't fall asleep, and then wake up. Oh, where am I? Oh my God, I lost the mitzvah. I didn't. Right, I didn't. You weren't conscientious. You're doing all kinds of nonsense, right? Playing with your phone, playing with this, playing with that. Then you lost the mitzvah. Now it's too late. It's already 6:15. Time to go pray now shachrit, right? It's not time for Hanukkah anymore. Candles. I mean, that's the thing. So you got to be careful about that. So there's no makeup. Once you missed it, there's no makeup. ובלילה אחרות אחרות וידליק כמו שאר בני אדם פי שלא הדליק בראשונה. So he says, right, but the Rama adds also another point, right, which is important to know, that even though you missed the first night, because you waited till dawn, so first night you lost, but it doesn't mean you can't light the night after, right? Subsequent light, you can light not as a makeup, but as the second night. So therefore, you can light the next nights, the following nights, the subsequent nights, you can light. But whatever you missed now, the first night, there's no way to make that up. That's what it is, right? Okay, very good. Chazak Baruch. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth, health, happiness. We'll see you tomorrow, Bezat Hashem. Pray for the victory of our great soldiers, valiant soldiers who are doing an incredible job, showing the whole world, right, what's how to conduct an army, right? Even though they're criticizing, and they know that we're better than them. That's why they're jealous. So all the best. Laila Tov.
Kavod Harav, thank you so much.
That's exactly what happened, by the way, on Hanukkah. We were better than them, and we defeated them. And that's what's going on right now. Same thing. Hashem should help us. Bezat Hashem. Laila Tov. All the best.
Thank you so much.